Well, shifting back to what I did say we were going to talk about,
Okay.
how would you define good art? Are there objective standards to art? So is there good art and bad art, or is it really just subjective to preferences?
There's a little of both. I think where I would like to see the Christian community grow a little more sophisticated is in looking at modern art. There has been a tendency for our good thinkers, thinkers who do well in other arenas, to look at modern art and just completely cast it off and say, it's all subjective, it's silly, and so I'm not going to give it the time of day. And the problem with that is that very often, if we would take the time to listen to art, we would actually see it as a completely open door through which we could walk with a redemptive message.
Mm-hmm.
For example, right, last summer I taught a creative writing class at Dallas Seminary, and we went to the Dallas Museum of Art, and there was a Japanese artist there who, his paintings are just to write a date. He takes a huge canvas and he writes a date.
That's all it
Of
does, yeah.
whatever today is. And if he
Right.
doesn't finish that day's painting on that date, he throws it away. And so you see this gallery full of June 16, 1979, or which was my wedding date, or whatever these dates are. And he also has this picture where he's taken 100 years and he's given a square for every single day within a 100-year span. And then he's put a red dot of every day he was alive during that span. And one of my students, I thought rather astutely, noted this guy would be really an interesting person to discuss the biblical concept of teach us to number our days. What has he learned about numbering his days? And
Yeah.
this is how we need to be approaching modern art. Instead of saying it has value or it doesn't have value based on some sort of our own criteria or very subjective, to say, what do I learn about general revelation from this piece? And what do I learn about the artist? And what do I learn about what doors of communication might be available to me through this artist? We look at Jackson Pollock and we say anybody can just splatter paint, and yet when you go to a website where you can create a Jackson Pollock and try to do that, you realize it's not actually that easy to be random.
Right.
An example is how we might make pizza. That's a great piece of modern art. When you make a pizza, you don't put all the cheese in one section and you don't put all the pepperoni in one section, unless perhaps you're trying to communicate something about decay.
Or that my husband likes pepperoni.
Oh, there you go. Yes, exactly. But it's really a piece of modern art in most pieces of pizza, in that most pizzas, I mean, you're taking the cheese and you're trying to make it even. You're trying to have balance. You're trying to have symmetry. And even though it's not representational art, so it's not somebody's face, still there's something inside of you that tells you the difference between a 5-year-old making a pizza and somebody who's a little more sophisticated. And I think sophistication is an important word there, because sometimes we're afraid to interact with it because sometimes it is bad, but we don't want to appear unsophisticated. Like, we don't want to say the emperor's not wearing any clothes. So we don't say anything. And an example of that would be art that uses human excrement in it. Well, why don't we say, that's really offensive? Do we really have to use those things to communicate? On the other hand, why not use that as an open door and say, that is right in line with my view of sin, which says everything is decaying until Christ comes. And this is another example of how even our art has anti-beauty in it and has anti-God elements in it. Or you could take a piece of art that really communicates something satanic and say, I'm not going to put that on my wall because I don't want to celebrate what this communicates. While at the same time I can say, but this still communicates truth in a sense. I mean, you can use anything all roads lead to God. So I think that's where we have failed to some degree in lacking in our inability to see opportunities that we have to use art as a means of communication.
You touched on kind of your vision for how we as Christians respond to art. What is your vision for Christian artists participating in the world going forward?
I think that one of the ways Christian artists often feel too constrained is that when they try to communicate something about the natural world. And there's a difference between general revelation, which is all of creation and everything falling under God's green earth, and then there's special revelation, which is the Bible. We have tended to say, unless it's special revelation, like a Rembrandt prodigal son, it's not worthy. But the fact is, God made the butterfly. So if you have someone making a beautiful butterfly, if you have someone looking at a piece of grass, then that should fall under what Christians embrace. And that's why we haven't had a broad enough view. At the same time, not every kind of art is redemptive, in that there's something that special revelation communicates that is not communicated as directly in general revelation. So I do like to see an artist who is Christian making the bridge between general revelation and special revelation, and being overtly a Christ follower in what's communicated. At the same time, I think we're misguided if we say that everything that person creates has to be overtly Christian.
Yeah.
I did write a novel, and there were redemptive themes, the last one I did, but I had a talk show host from a Christian talk show pull me aside afterwards and try to share with me the 4 spiritual laws. She was not sure I knew Christ, because I did not share the 4 spiritual laws in my story. Yeah. And yet, I don't know how many average, everyday Christians communicate Christ that way. It's usually much less organized than that in how they live out and how they communicate their faith.
Taking cookies to your neighbor. And
I do think we need to bridge the gap between doing righteous deeds and actually communicating about Christ, but I don't think that having a 4-point outline is always the way that it has to be communicated.
Well, thank you very much, Sandy, for talking with us, with me, and then with us and the people on the blog. So I appreciate it.